Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Welcome everyone, thank you for coming. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cheryl Mack and I am the Chapter Director for Startup Grind here in Vancouver. First of all, I'd like to thank all of our amazing sponsors for making tonight happen. This great space was provided to us by Zone Vancouver. If you're interested in hosting an event here, you can speak to Ketavan right over there waving her arm. The food tonight was generously sponsored by the Canadian Youth Business Foundation. The CYVF is a non-profit national team with a team of 8 here in BC. They work with over 35 community partners across the province to best serve entrepreneurs and connect them fully with resources and money that they need. They also have a team to work one-on-one with individuals that want help working through their business plan, cash flow, or going from idea to execution. If you have any questions, please reach out to Paulina. She's right there in the white jacket. Our lovely bar setup at the back there with all the drinks was sponsored tonight by Privatus Tech. That's Steve in the red shirt over there, and he'll be happy to tell you all about their new app that they're about to launch. Our photography is being done by Julian Photography right there. And the pictures will be available for us to check out on the Zone Vancouver Facebook page. I'd also like to make an announcement about next month's event. We're going to switch it up a little bit, and rather than doing a speaker series, we're holding Vancouver's largest startup Christmas party. So be sure to grab your tickets, and we'll also be doing a draw for 2 free tickets at the end of the night. Awesome. Well, it is my pleasure to introduce Boris Mann. Boris is the founder and managing partner of Fullstack, a napkin capital investment firm that works with early stage companies in technology. And Boris has been an active member of the Vancouver startup ecosystem for almost a decade. His first startup was Bryght, an all-Drupal commercial company, the first of its kind. He's since sold Bryght to Raincity Studios and then went on to co-found Bootup Labs with Danny Robinson, who was our speaker from last week. And he's one of the founding organizers of Northern Voice, which was the first North American blogging conference. And he is an active investor, advisor, and referrer for many of the startups and developer communities on multiple continents. Thank you, Boris.
Now I pretty much just feel old. Thanks.
All right, so.
I love that we have a fire, also that apparently my mic is very loud.
I think it's you, actually.
I probably don't need a mic.
No, you don't.
Are you recording the audio?
We are.
Okay, I'll use the mic.
The mic is necessary. Awesome. Is mine still working?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. So, how did you decide to go to UVic for school?
I went to the University of Victoria because I'm from Bowen Island. Does anyone know where Bowen Island is? All right, shout out for the Bowen Island. And because right after high school, I sailed around the world on a tall ship in the North and South Pacific, and I thought I was going to be a marine biologist. So obviously, the University of Victoria is the best place to become a marine biologist.
Okay. Makes sense. What did your initial education focus on?
Failing a lot of organic chemistry. Yeah, I probably shouldn't talk about those other parts. So I was actually in biology and realized that all of it was memorization up until you were a grad student, and that it really wasn't for me. But I kept up with computer science on the side, and I kind of had my set of credits and tried to make a degree out of it. And originally I'm going to do a psychology major and a minor in computer science, and I'm going to do AI. And then I did Psych 100 and went, yeah, I'm not going to memorize 3 or 4 years of Psych, forget it, and just did computer science.
Awesome. Did you know at that time that you wanted to start your own company?
So it's interesting. I remember a lot of late night sessions with a couple of people who are back in Vancouver today. If any of you know Peter Armstrong, he runs a company called LeanPub. That basically is a lean approach to publishing tech books. You use Dropbox to start writing your book, and people can buy your book before it's done, and they keep getting versions of it. And he and I had we were sitting around, and we were going to do a startup. around the web. We had a website, we did our own HTML, and we were going to do a pizza ordering website. So I don't know if you, and this is circa 1997 or so. I don't know if you know, but the Toronto pizza market alone is $1 million a year, and we did some quick math, and we're like, 10% of that would be $100,000. And so our company was going to be called Flying Squid, but somehow we thought you didn't like incorporate right away. We're like, when we incorporate, it's going to be called Flying Squid Inc. And then we never did anything because it turns out hosting and a bunch of other stuff was really expensive at the time, and online pizza ordering in 1997 wasn't a good idea either.
Fair enough. What did you do when you graduated from school?
So I did the co-op program. There's no way that I would have made it through my university education if I hadn't done co-op. Not just from a financial perspective, but from the perspective of connecting what I was learning to actually doing things in the real world. And I think that's sort of a common theme that comes up over and over again. Learn by doing. So going through that co-op program, I got to do a lot of different things. I purposely tried to work with a number of different companies. Worked with a forestry company on Vancouver Island where I traveled around to all the different locations, and I was like IT support, was building computers and writing access databases to automate systems that were just foolishly being done in Excel before. And then I worked for Nortel and various other companies in Ottawa, and that's where the hot center of things were going. And so I ended up getting hired by Nortel straight out of school, and that pretty much, no one's actually ever paid me to program. So you can get a computer science degree still today and not learn how to program because it's actually all math and algorithms. I did learn how to program, I tinkered, I enjoyed it, but ultimately ended up in a position where I wasn't programming, and that kind of started putting me in this position of thinking around about sort of an analyst role, and worked at Nortel, which was a really, really big co when they were like doing like this in the marketplace. And then I also was at this part. Kind of got a t-shirt that said, I survived 6 rounds of layoffs at Nortel. I can't be completely useless. It was long, but I thought it made sense.
Do you still have that t-shirt?
No.
So then you went to start your first startup, Bryght. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so that was an interesting time. I hung out in Ottawa for a little more. Not much was going on there at the time. If you're not doing much of anything, Vancouver and the coast is a much better place to be than Ottawa. Ottawa has like an 80-degree temperature differential. It's minus 40 in the winter, plus wind chill, and it's plus 40 in the summer, plus humidex. And I think a lot of people that grow up on the coast really, it's always like, okay, I'll go somewhere else, but I'm gonna come back. Or if you've never left before, go somewhere else, and then you're like, oh, that's why real estate's expensive. Bryght with a Y. I ended up actually coming back. I was hanging out in Vancouver, was really living in Vancouver for the first time because I grew up on Bowen Island, which is not exactly Vancouver. And I had been tinkering with Drupal for a couple of years, big open source CMS. It's been around since 2000, I forget if it's 2000 or 2001. So it's old. It's one of the original LAMP, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP applications. But it was really well suited for building all sorts of things. And I've always had a passion, not for building the thing, but for building the thing that builds things, like that enables other people to do stuff on top of it. I got to meet my current business partner, Lance Tracy, so I've known him for almost a decade as well. And we chatted, and he started sort of like, here's some tech ideas, what do you think of this sort of thing? This is a long story, but I think it's worth it, and Lance deserves a lot of credit here. So we chatted, and I was excited about blogs and RSS. Again, these are not exciting topics today, but they were. There was a fantastic meetup. Robert Scoble came to town. His wife, Miriam, is Persian and has family in North Vancouver. So he came to town and he did his usual, posted on his blog, hey, I'm coming to Vancouver. Let's all do a geek meetup and go for Thai food in Yaletown. And I'm like, oh, this is super cool. Robert Scoble's coming to town. Let's go have lunch with him. Which is like, literally, there was a couple thousand people who blogged who all knew each other because there weren't that many people who were blogging worldwide. So we sat down. Tim Bryght, I don't know if you know him, he's an inventor of XML and done a lot of amazing things, works at Google now. Robert Scoble, I invited Darren Barefoot, who I also nicknamed the blog father because he's sort of one of the original Canadian bloggers. And a lot of interesting people sat down and we talked about how RSS and blogging was connecting people and there was communication and it was amazing. And again, all of this, for those of you who've been around for the rise of social media, it's like, oh, we used to call social media blogging because that's all there was. And I kind of came away with that meeting and went, oh my God, there's a huge opportunity here. There's stuff going to go like everywhere. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but stuff's going to go everywhere. And Lance had sent me an email and said, hey, here's this thing that we're looking at, looks kind of interesting. And it was PubSub, which is a company that did real-time indexing of the web, especially around RSS feeds. And you do really amazing things that still don't exist today, like Google Alerts is even worse, where you could do things like show me all posts that have Vancouver in the title and have a JPEG in the body. It was a little more it was syntax to do that sort of thing, but literally those are the kinds of things you do. It would just send you responses. And I'm like, it's gonna be gigantic. I don't know exactly how they're gonna make money, but you should totally invest in this company. And he's like, okay, that's sort of interesting. You should come down, we should chat. You should figure out, come work for me. I've got a bunch of investments, let's just hang out and see what happens. So I went down to his office and we're talking about the final details. I'm going to do some contracting, work for some companies, and the phone rings. And he's like, oh, just say, I actually have to take this. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. He takes it. He's like, all right, awesome. And he turns around and faces me again. He's like, well, thanks in part to your recommendation, we just invested $1 million into that company. And I just kind of went, oh my God. I've gotten a little more used to 1 million. He didn't actually do that but in my head, that's exactly what happened. So that was really interesting. And so I started to work with Lance, and as part of that, worked with a bunch of his companies, and then kind of came up with my own concept, along with a ragtag band of other early users of Drupal, and decided to do the WordPress.com of Drupal. Except, of course, WordPress.com didn't exist at the time. I know Matt Allenweg in part because he started about the same time we did. And I still have some screenshots of some Google Trends graphs where Bright's going and WordPress is So that's a little bit about my first company. That's a really long story.
That's a great story. Why are you such a big advocate of open source?
Because I'm interested in building the thing that builds things. Code is worthless. It's absolutely worthless. It's also all you have to do is spend money to get someone else to rebuild code. We've seen this already with technology, right? So with Bryght, one of the things that held us back, it's a tiny little thing, was step one, lease 50 servers. Step two, use brand new virtualization software, Zen, to virtualize it. Step one was build our own cloud. And so in that same way, open source lets you get rid of a bunch of other things that someone else has already done, has already figured out, and we can all move on, sure, as a species, to more interesting things, right? Commerce is the thing that currently locks up or value in things like code because somebody thinks that having copyright on a chunk of code is super, super value. It pretty much, except for certain patentable things and super hard sciencey things and algorithm-y things, is never the valuable part. It's going to be all sorts of other bits and pieces of things. So I'm a big supporter of open source because it just makes sense and it lets us focus on harder problems. And it's one more step in my default, and I think some people are wired this way, is, all right, let's see who who's already working on something around this, and it gives us a framework to work together.
Awesome. So you sold Bryght in 2007. Was it difficult to leave your baby behind?
No. So I'll step back a bit, right? So we were going like this. I'm like, oh, I've been on this bar before. And then we were going like this. So the challenge with Bryght was timing. About 5 years too early. I'm trying to work on that still. Literally the next, like WordPress.com of Drupal, literally launched 5 years after we launched it, with lots and lots of VC funding. I didn't have enough capital, and I didn't have enough mentorship. There was no one to talk to who had built a web tech company before in Vancouver who could help figure out what we should have done is gotten a bunch of funding. This was very early. No one else had click a button, build website at the time. So we did what lots of Vancouver companies do. We'll just do a little bit of consulting. It'll be fine. Right, Ash? No, it won't be. And that was interesting. So we ended up with a really great tech team. We got to $1 million in revenue a year. It's not hard to do with a consulting company, especially when you're working on something super cutting edge where there's no other experts in the world. Did work for the US military, not part of the kill chain. It was stuff for NATO, in going to the US military base in Germany, in Stuttgart. Built the first Grateful Dead community website. Did a bunch of work with Warner Brothers Records. A lot of my team threw a lot of really awesome parties at South by Southwest while I was with black turtlenecked open source geeks in Europe, usually around the same time that South by Southwest was happening. So, we drifted into consulting, and we drifted more into consulting, and I woke up one day and I'm like, I don't want to be running a consulting company. So selling to Raincity, which had been a longtime partner and was a consulting company and wanted to run a consulting company, was the right thing to do.
So it turned into a consulting company that you sold.
Don't be all harsh like that.
You chose to return to Vancouver to start Bryght. Why did you choose Vancouver over, say, San Francisco or anywhere in the Valley?
That's not how companies start, for one. I've actually asked Stuart Butterfield, oh, you're right, that whole lunch thing, that was when Flickr was starting, maybe a month after Flickr was started, and Stuart kind of wandered by, and interesting stuff. Bryght was a part of just coming back to Vancouver. I thought I was either going to do a voice over IP startup, which I'd been doing a bunch of standards work with at Nortel, or I was going to do kind of a web CMS startup is kind of what I was thinking that. So I kind of had it in mind. Vancouver was the place where I happened to be at the time. So I think that is the answer to a lot of those questions. Silicon Valley wasn't a thing, or rather it was a thing that would all to do with hardware, right? So to be clear, the Northern Voice Conference, how many of you people have heard about the Northern Voice Conference? A handful of people. So it literally was the first blogging conference, certainly in Canada. It was the second one in North America ever. And all these people who were doing web startups in San Francisco went, what the hell? There's a blogger conference in Canada. Some of them got to the airport in San Francisco and were like, you need a passport to go to Canada? Circa 2005, 2006 sort of thing. And they came up to this blogger conference, and I got to know, that was where I first got to know a bunch of people from San Francisco in the early days of Web 2.0, because they're like, there's a bunch of users, and that's what it was, is a user conference, and there's these early adopters up in Canada, so we want to go and talk to our users. And so that was very interesting to me, right? That, to me, just kind of says that you can do this sort of thing anywhere. So I think I kind of stumbled into doing the startup here and kind of woke up and I guess this is a startup.
Awesome. Do you feel like people have a bit of a chip on their shoulder about Vancouver? And if so, why?
That's a really interesting question. Which is the key phrase for pausing while you think. I don't think we have a chip on our shoulder. We, who, us, someone. I think it's problematic if you've never been anywhere else. I kind of say, you know, I went back east, I went to Ottawa. Vancouver was a sleepy little town at the point when I left Vancouver. Other way around. Things were happening in Ottawa, nothing was going on here. I graduated, started interviewing for jobs, and people said, you can be a developer. I'm like, great, what am I going to be in 6 months? And they're like, intermediate developer. I'm like, what about 6 months after that? They're like, senior developer? I'm like, that doesn't really sound like a growth and career opportunity. And Nortel has like a department that says like, here's your skill tree. If you want to be an archer, go in this direction. If you want to be a fighter, go in this direction. That's actually the classes at Nortel, and probably one of the reasons they failed. No, you need healers. Everyone knows that. AKA salespeople. So Vancouver coming back was more interesting things were happening, but we always have had a mix of things. So one of the reasons is people say like, I can live anywhere in Canada. Where should I live? Most of the time people go, fuck yeah, Vancouver, right? But that's also sort of our downside. So lots of people end up here for various lifestyle reasons, and we have an interesting mix. You know, a lot of people move here from Europe. They fly over all of the rest of Canada and are like, snow, 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 and land, right? And then they're like, sweet, snow, Whistler. You know, and the same thing from Asia, right? It really is the spot where we've got a lot of interesting going on. We've got a lot of background in film and TV. We've got gaming, which is its own little ecosystem universe that's slowly being eaten away by iPhone games. So there's this interesting mix of creative people and environmental and all these other interesting things. So the challenge I think that we have is we don't have anything other than like snowboarding and weed to like unite ourselves or something like that, right? You know, Detroit, Motor City or something like that. But we're starting to have like, oh yeah, there's that social media company and a few other things like that. So the challenge is we're not a headquarters place. I think that's the chip on our shoulder maybe thing, but you do realize that we now have Facebook, Amazon, Salesforce, Twitter, and oh right, Hootsuite, right? One of our own is kind of on that list and things like that, which is interesting. So I don't know if there is a chip. I think I have personally an internal drive to say, I know lots of people in the Valley and other interesting places that I could move there, I could do a company there, but I don't want to live there. So if I want to live here and I also want to work with interesting people on interesting projects, then by default, I need to invest in growing Vancouver into being the kind of place and the kind of ecosystem that I want to continue to collaborate in.
I then went on to co-found the first seed accelerator in Vancouver with Danny. That was Bootup Labs.
Yes.
What prompted the switch from entrepreneur to investor?
I like to build the thing that builds things, right? So, and it was scratching my own itch. First seed accelerator in Canada, actually, not just in Vancouver. Yeah, I mean, so the timing was 2007, 2008-ish, and there were 6 of these new kind of accelerators. A lot of people at the time said, oh yeah, we've done incubators before, and we're like, yeah, but that was hand someone a check for $2 million, take $1 million, pay it to Sun Microsystems to buy servers, and pray for more money. So we had these repeatable processes and other things like that. So coming out of Bryght, that's what it was. I didn't have enough capital, I didn't have enough mentorship. What if we built a thing that provided those two things? And so that was really, again, the thing about it. And yeah, I was crazy enough to think that I could take some of those mistakes that I had made and try and say, no, ow, that's a burning hot stove, don't touch that, go over here instead. And that's how it kind of came about.
Great. When things go south, as they often do in startups, what keeps you motivated to keep working?
So it's always a roller coaster, but that's exactly what life is at the end of the day as well. It's just money, it's just a company. I think one of the biggest things that I counsel early first-time founders to think about, which is hard because we're not wired this way, is that the company is a separate entity, and that's really something that should guide all sorts of things around funding, hiring, approach to the market, just everything. It is actually a separate entity that isn't you. You are just like the captain or guiding it in different ways. So distance from that is one thing. This cheesy thing of work-life balance, right, is I'm always aiming for that in different ways. I have real passions around cooking, so I do things that aren't just technology and surfing the internet. Lots of it is. I also like video games and other things like that, but having other things to throw yourself into, whether that's going for a walk along the beach, going paddleboarding, going on a photo walk, cooking, it's just a job. Chill out, dude.
That's good, thank you. What has been your experience personally with acquiring funding at the earliest stages?
So it turns out that someone recently did a little review of funding in Canada this year. And I was super surprised to find that Full Stack is the 5th most active investor in Canada for 2013. You're like, yeah, awesome. We've been around since December. That fucking sucks. That's ridiculous. Oh, and by the way, 2, 3, and 4 are tied. Right? That's crazy. And we're not done yet for the year. Like, it's... capital was definitely one of the things I was aiming to try and fix with Bootup. That was the hypothesis that we failed on. We succeeded on the acceleration part, we failed on the capital part. And if you fail on the capital part, your company's done. So it's really, really hard. It's early stage funding in Canada, in Vancouver, is super brutal. We need to make more connections down south. We need to attract some more US investors because it just doesn't look like we're going to have a homegrown angel investment or CVC that is adequately sized for the demand. I'm sure you don't want to hear that. The flip side of that is you really, 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 really can get to selling soon. I think it's going to be very hard to build B2C companies in Canada because you need lots of funding to get to lots and lots of users. I think that's in part why we see a lot of B2B companies, is that you can stand something up and you can immediately start charging people. Again, this is one of those good news, bad news roller coaster sort of thing. Canadian companies are extremely capital efficient because they have to be. But this is a good discipline. It really is. I know some folks who just came back from San Francisco and they were talking to a company and they were kind of looking under the covers a little and they came back and they went, do you know how much money they're spending and it's not really going anywhere? So, you know, your good idea all the information is out there. AngelList is a fantastic resource. How many of you have heard of AngelList? Great, that's awesome, that's fantastic. It's sort of on my top list of like, you know, are you on AngelList? Do not pass go, just go on AngelList. Including if you're looking for work, actually. It's a really, really great place to connect with startup jobs and has a really innovative way of sort of having a double opt-in. If you're interested in a company and they're interested in you, they're all like, come on now. It's great. So yeah, I think the answer to that is, it sucks. Next.
You mentioned that you failed at the capital part. How did that happen and what would you do differently?
By accident, have more of it. Oh, you want the long version? Okay. So yeah, it was very interesting. So how many of you have heard of Real Ventures? A couple, that's good. They're I'm gonna say they're my favorite venture company in Canada. So they're based out of Montreal. They also run the other big accelerator of the company, Founder Fuel. John Stokes was running Montreal Startup Fund back in the day, and just started looking into this concept of the accelerator at the same time. And we bumped into him because we were looking at some of the same things. And he went down this path of working with the Quebec government and doing a bunch of other things and setting up a big structure and raising a big chunk of money that took kind of years and years and years to, well, more years than it took us. And Danny and I were like, we can totally do this. We can do it like this, and the model, this is the right thing, and we had that entrepreneurial passion that we knew that we had to do this thing, and it was the right thing to do, and we were doing launch party stuff for the first time, which I connected with Danny and Martin, and we're like, this is absolutely the right thing in Vancouver. This is going to be the first one of these, it's going to be amazing, and how hard can it be to be an investor? We'll just raise some money. And I'm like, I'm really, okay, Danny, you've raised like hundreds of millions, I hope you're good at this. So, you know, we did essentially lean. You know, we raised a little bit of money, we did the first cohort, we raised some more money, but not all those checks made it into the bank. And one of the investors ended up investing in the Red Cross Haiti earthquake recovery instead. Totally fair, right? And that left us a little short, so we cut a few corners there and unfortunately couldn't fund everybody that we wanted to for our second cohort. So, like I said, I think we failed at the capital side of things, private capital. There's still no accelerators in Canada funded entirely on private capital. Every single one of them have BDC, follow-on funding, which is one of the main things that makes them attractive to startups, which is tough, right? So 0 still. And however, there's like bazillions of accelerators kind of everywhere in every small little town everywhere, which I can't necessarily disagree with. You can't necessarily make money doing that. Economic development, I think, needs to focus even more on knowledge work. So something to be said for that. So yeah, what would I have done differently? It's, you know, time and place for these things. I was too early again, or not. I'm not sure.
Tell me about the first startup that you invested in and why did you choose them?
I'll actually tell the story of the Romanians. They're not the first startup, but it's the one I'm going to tell.
Okay.
Damn you and your questions, I can answer whatever I want. So, team from Romania. Again, we were some of the first startup accelerators at all in Canada. And this team from Romania applied. And they all had gold medals in programming. All of them. I'm like, I didn't even know they gave medals for that. I was going to do pizza ordering. You know, was really impressed by the team. And I'm like, Danny, there's this Romanian team that all have gold medals. You know, I felt like we had to figure it out. We had to bring them over. And they're actually kind of what kicked off what's now a viable startup visa, because we had real trouble investing in them and bringing them into the country. So that team was called Sumify, or eventually was called Sumify, and ended up getting acquired by Twitter. So that's a pretty decent outcome.
So the only reason you chose them was because they all had gold medals?
It helped. A lot of it is chemistry, right? So in general, so the tagline for Full Stack is talent plus tools plus capital. Capital comes last in that list. We can write a check, but we actually look at ways that we can add value first. Is this a team that we can work with? Can we be helpful in some way? Oh, you've got a really great idea for long-haul trucking. Like, I don't have any experience in long-haul trucking or what it takes to market to long-haul truckers or whatever. Please come see me if you have a great long-haul trucking idea. I'm sure we can work something out. But so there's definitely that. You have to be able to work with people. You have to get a sense of them as people. The napkin capital, which never really took off as a phrase. The way I thought about it was kind of early stage sketches, early stage ideas, and as well, people that you want to have dinner with. You want to invest in people that you want to go for dinner with, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them through ups and downs. The rest of the picking is more complicated. Some of it is pattern recognition, having some idea of what works and what doesn't, but also really trusting that the team is going to make some good choices. And a lot of it, like, honestly, if you're approaching any of this stuff, look for templates. We have a section on the Full Stack website, fullstack.ca/tools, We're just starting to gather a bunch of different things. How are you going to do a pitch deck? You're going to use Dave McClure's template. You're going to do 10 slides. You're going to put exactly what is said on those 10 slides filled in there. Why? Because you've never done a pitch deck before, so why do you think you should make one from scratch? Paint by number. Honestly, it's a good start. It's a starting point to have a discussion around other things.
Awesome. You stated that Full Stack isn't a co-working space, nor is it just a check writing machine. What's your vision for Full Stack and Stackhouse in the long run?
Robotic check writing machine. It's like, oh, you've got an office, that means you're an incubator. No, I just needed an office, and I knew some other interesting people who needed an office as well, and then some of them we ended up writing checks. We're totally not an incubator. Not a co-working that not really interested in renting individual desks at a time, or doing a real estate play or other things like that. Right now, Lance and I are treating Full Stack as a startup, as an experiment. Our main KPI, and this is cheesy, but it's great to be working with a partner like Lance. Our main KPI is, are we having fun still? Which is great. You should only pour large amount of your life into things that you're actually enjoying doing. I think that's what lands a lot of us in startup land, is that we find a way to align passions rather than just taking a job. What will Full Stack be when it grows up? It's got an investment arm and an operating arm, which is exactly how Bootup Labs was structured as well, and how 500 startups, Dave McClure and various others are structured. We get to play a lot with the operating arm. We built a little budget templating tool called Budgie. Actually, Neil is in the room. Neil? Where's Neil? Wave at Neil. Neil is the current entrepreneur in residence at Full Stack, which is another role I get to experiment with. And so we took a template that we had, that we actually took from Point 9 Capital, which is a investor in Berlin. And people kept coming and saying, hey, can you give me a budget template? Bye, Sarah. She's from Unbound. She's really cool. I thought she was going to heckle me. That didn't happen.
I got her questions.
Good. Awesome. And so we kept getting asked, like, can you give me a template? And I'm like, okay, this is super simple. You know, we built a little wizard, and then it dumps a Google spreadsheet that is the standard, like, okay, you're going to pay $500 for accounting and $500 for legal, and like put in like dates when you're going to hire different roles, and it just builds a little one-year spreadsheet of about how much money you're going to need, which is the exact thing that I want to sit down and talk about and saying, okay, you want to raise X $100,000, how are you going to spend it? And we have a tool that says, oh, yeah, that seems about right. Or, don't you think you should hire a marketing person earlier? Ash?
Yes.
Yeah. Ash is the very best startup advisor in the room right now, and I'm not kidding about this, because he spent a lot of time as far as his own and learned a lot of lessons the hard way, so he has a lot of wisdom to pass on right now. And so that's one experiment. I've set aside about $6,000 to fund 12 different events at $500 a piece, right? Not any events, but just saying, sure, let's sponsor something for $500, right? As again, that lean methodology. Let's see what works. Let's see what people enjoy. So we're trying these different things and seeing what works and what doesn't. What Full Stack grows up to be will be driven by the demands of the entrepreneurs that we work with. You know, I kind of can see that we probably need to get into recruiting, because if we have a number of companies that are all successful and all funded, they're all going to need to hire. Well, instead of them all hiring separately like dummies, we can actually work together and possibly do that together. The common theme here, let's build the thing that builds things, and let's figure out ways to work together.
Awesome, that sounds fantastic. I'm excited. You're probably one of the most active members in building the startup community. How do you find time to balance your day job versus your community work and then also social life?
I don't. It's really hard, and I'm constantly trying to reset myself. So I'm an extroverted introvert. I need to put my headphones on and play video games, sometimes too late into the night, just to kind of like not do anything. Cooking is definitely something that just takes me out of myself. I'm in the moment. I still produce things. I need to find tinkering time to port the Full Stack website to the brand new art platform, because I need to kind of still spend a little time figuring out what's new and exciting on the tech side of things. So it's a constant balancing act. I would say to everyone that you need to think about your time as an investment, and again, try and invest in things that aren't just point solutions, right? Can you put a little time into something and see how it goes and then put more in? Can you attract other people to help you? Can you look for owners? Can you share the load? You follow things that you're inspired by and a bunch of other things like this. Like, if you want help and you don't know where to get started, just pick something that you're passionate about. Don't ask other people how you can help. I don't know, and the last thing I need to do is manage other people who say they want to help, right? Cheryl has decided, I'm gonna run Startup Grind. Awesome, fantastic. I don't know if you read Jesse Hislop recently posted to the Pixel Crafters meetup group that's now over 2,000 members, and that was kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of things. Jesse's concept for that has always been that Pixel Crafters is an open source brand that the startup community can do whatever they want on top of, to do their own thing. So instead of step one having to be find 2,000 people that I can market to or tell something about, you can be like, great, I can put a meetup on Pixel Crafters. It's the usual. Instead of doing point solutions, build the thing that builds things, figure out how to work together.
Awesome. So if somebody in the community wanted to get involved and help grow the community, where would they start?
They'd start by going to Pixel Crafters, and this is lean. What is the smallest thing that you can do to see if other people are excited about your idea and the thing that you're passionate about? Only do something that you actually want to do. Hey, I think there's a gap. We should really get together and talk about cap tables. It's a terrible example, but whatever. Or let's all get together and do business model canvas or lean canvas to talk about each other's ideas. Or what if we shared notes about investors, right? Crazy concepts like that. There's all sorts of things you can do. Who's gonna, I bet there's like 6 people in the room raising money or thinking about raising money. Why don't you go for dinner and talk about how you're gonna approach it and work together? You're not alone. So what's the very small thing? Just get started, but it's something that you have to personally be interested in. Don't look for something else to glom onto. Again, there's opportunities if you want to volunteer. Sure, Cheryl can use volunteers and all sorts of things.
Yes, we can.
Perfect, right? So what's some small little thing that you can do that you actually want the outcome of as well? If you're doing something that you don't want the outcome of, you're gonna get bored very quickly and not want to keep doing it.
One of Vancouver's biggest pain points right now is finding the technical top talent. What's your advice for that, and do you see that changing anytime?
It's the same everywhere. We are in much better shape than San Francisco. One of the challenges is that we keep having more and more juniors come into the market, design, development, marketing, all across the board from various educational institutions all around here. We don't have enough big companies that have intermediate and senior people to train those junior people, so you end up with this vast mass of juniors. So how do we level them up? Things that you can do is, I would say, is work together as peers, right? So Cal is doing a really good job with the Ruby meetup of having hack sessions and working with people who want to learn more and other things like that. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I am trying to get some people to work together around this. I'm not volunteering for this one. I think what we need to do is we need to spread the word and import people from elsewhere. That's one of the advantages that we have. It's really easy to get people to move here. We don't pay them enough, which is kind of a problem at all, like all of Vancouver, because we don't have enough funding. See how that is. But internationally, reach out, spread the word that Vancouver is hiring. So I hope that we're going to see something around that in the spring.
I like it. Spread the word that Vancouver is hiring. Everyone got that? Awesome. What would you say that tech co-founders are lacking most in skill set?
Marketing. You very, very rarely have a marketing focused co-founder. It's often something that people do off the side of their desk. It's really hard, again, to bring in as an early hire, again, because you can only afford a junior. You know, it just keeps going around and around in that area. Marketing is a very broad space as well. Lots of people are confused about what it means, and I think it's even evolving. I use the phrase technical marketing sometimes to refer to a lot of the product-focused stuff that isn't just sort of top of funnel blogging and social media, but then looks into, okay, we've got people coming into our product. You know, do they like it? Do they leave? Do they stay around? And other than that, I would say Excel.
Excel.
Yes. You need to be really comfortable with numbers. There was a recent post about this as well. If you're a startup founder, learn to love Excel. It can help you. You don't want to over-rely on it, but it lets you do things like our budget spreadsheet. Oh, yeah, it will cost us $300,000 to operate for a year, and there really isn't any other way around it, sort of thing. But do user modeling, do other sorts of things like that. Again, that will give you a bit of guidance to like help knock out the clearly bad ideas. A founding team that I sat down with were paying for banner ads. And I'm like, have you really looked at the numbers of like what the conversion is for that? And they're like, no. I'm like, let's do some math. And they're like, oh, it's costing us $150 per user, and we only charge $10 per user. That's not a good deal. I'm like, no, it's not. So these are the sorts of things, right? Like, we don't want to swing too much in any of these directions. You want to be guided by some of these numbers, knock out those ideas, but yeah, Excel.
Awesome. What technology are you most excited about right now?
I love the fact that I don't run any servers. I don't even know, like, Parveen, want to give me a shout out for no servers? Yeah, there we go, right at the back there.
Did Bushmaster Heroku?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people still today are like, what does he mean? I gotta put my WordPress somewhere. No, you don't. If you want to host your WordPress somewhere, don't pay $5 for a crappy little site somewhere that will get hacked. Go to wpengine.com and pay them $30 a month, and your WordPress will always work. Never get hacked and never fall over. I really wish I could do a real life affiliate link because it would net me good coin if I could get you to follow it, but not gonna work. So no servers are a really interesting thing to think about. It also means really lightweight APIs. Todd and Tyler of Denim and Seal have done a lot of work with static sites and client-side apps and stuff like that as well. Hey Available is built in such a way, is it not? Ish? Yeah. Do you guys know about Hey Available? It's exciting. Basically, it's a little Twitter-powered job board where you can just like ping at Hey Available and say available or not available. Or hiring and like a job description and stuff like that. Very, very cool. And focused only on Vancouver right now. So no servers is something that you could keep thinking about. What does it mean to continue to live in a world with no servers? What does it mean to be able to launch really lightweight experiments very, very quickly? And that just keeps going, right? If you're doing an app for the phone, right? So lots of people are still doing apps. Games are a perfect example of this, that are only on your phone. No, it's a pocket computer that's connected to the sky all the time. Put a server on the back end, or put an API on the back end of it, and do interesting things. Yeah, I'm excited about too many things.
That's a good thing.
Okay.
Last question. Who do you think would win in a fight between you and Boris Words?
Or as we like to call him, Other Boris.
Other Boris.
It depends on what kind of a fight. He's also German. Yeah, I'm going to answer that as it depends on what kind of a fight. Wordsy.
We'll leave it at that. So we'll open it up for questions now. If you have a question, just put up your hand and I'll bring you the microphone.
Where do you see like sites like AngelList and Funders Club affecting your business as someone that invests in startups? Like, I think it's probably going to push back Series A and a few other things like that. I'm just curious where you see crowdfunding affecting angel investment communities?
The more the merrier. We don't really have, and almost everything I say is commentary on web tech, for starters, right? We don't really have an angel community in Vancouver, so it helps. Crowdfunding is an interesting one. Just like we focus not just on writing a check, but in adding value in different ways, the crowd can't really do that. I'm not like, awesome, if you can leverage crowdfunding to make your business work, awesome, go do it, right? A game on Kickstarter just recently raised $26 million, and I'm like, whatever. Like, actually, and some people who vote are like, are you crazy? That's an amazingly large amount of money. I'm like, yeah, but if you do the math, it's like 1 million people at $25, and I personally have funded like 6 different $25 games. So that's amazing, right? Like, there's no angel, everything else like that. I'm already seeing Series A being pushed back is just the start of it. There is no such thing as a clear path to that, where like you do a friends and family, and then you do a seed raise, and then you do that is not the case. You don't need a friends and family at all. You generally do a seed 1 that is super early, but you still pretty much have to have a prototype. Maybe if you have people who trust you, they'll give you money to focus on building the prototype beforehand. And then if it's not a completely terrible idea and you kind of see something somewhere along the way, you'll get a C2 funding that's slightly larger. And I can give you some ranges. Seed 1 is kind of like up to 500K, and C2 is kind of like 5, 6, 7, 800 to 1 point something, right? So yeah, this is happening already. It's cascading. It's lowering barriers, so that's the big thing, right? So you can connect to someone who invests in B2D startups out of Cleveland, Ohio. No problem. So do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions? Really?
Thanks. There it is. You said that, do you, like, one of the questions that you have to ask is, do you want to have dinner with this person? What do you look for in qualities for that particular thing? And do you think those skills are transferable to other areas of running a startup?
Yeah, persistence is a big one in kind of the right way, like finding the tone of a person, right? Like we've all have had interactions with people that kind of cross a line and end up being annoying, and the other people were like, oh yeah, so-and-so's on my back end, but I know I gotta get back to him or do whatever sort of thing, right? Be that part of persistent. Having dinner with, think of having a conversation, right? So like your entire life isn't your startup. What is the entire thing? Like tell the story of the thing that's the core of your thing, that even as other things around it change, is gonna be your North Star that you kind of help make decisions around, right? That doesn't come from me, right? I'm mainly gonna ask questions that I don't know the answer to, but that I think that the person who's doing this startup should probably go figure out, or that we talk together of like, no, you're asking the completely wrong question. Is it transferable to other areas? People who do startups are not magical unicorns. I know there's a gasp in the audience here, right? Part of it is that we've kind of gone through this phase change where we've realized that lots of the ways that used to be logical ways of doing anything, step 1, get everything perfect. Step 2, raise shit tons of money. Step 3, only succeed, are wrong, right? That in fact it is everyone, right? I actually had breakfast with Lance yesterday, and I'm like, you know what we need to do an accelerator for? Small businesses. Every single small business in the world started, and they're like, I'm gonna be a hairdresser. First of all, I'm gonna figure out how to do accounting from scratch, right? I'm gonna figure out how to do X. I'm like, that's insane. All of these things are solved problems. So persistence, some conversation around it, James Altucher, who has a link that I'll tweet at some point, says things about focus and not having focus. He'll say, your investors will make you focus. We don't, we're wacky. We're the ones who are like, huh, maybe you should go off this way. So it is really hard to tell. Done your homework is the other thing I would say. Is when I say templates, all this shit is out there. Angel list, there's a bunch of things that you can do. There's nothing replaces actually learning it and doing it in practice. I had someone come to me who had done the equivalent of 4,000 surveys and interviews before he decided to do his startup. Something called Google Consumer Surveys is a really good tool for this. Spend a little bit of money on Facebook ads, linking to a survey and other things like that. So you can gather a bunch of information. If you come to me and say, I did this thing and here were the results of my experiment, that's fantastic. You've taught me something, right? So that's what I'm also looking for. I am not a font of wisdom. I've made a shit ton of mistakes. What I'm looking for is new mistakes to make. So I'm looking for someone to go along the way and say, yeah, let's go make some new mistakes together, and I'll give you some hypothesis money. Does that vaguely answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'd also love to hear your names when you say hi and have a question.
Cool. I'm Devin Ash.
Hello, Devin.
Hello.
This works. I'm Kellen. Hi.
Hi.
So Danny was here like last month, and he said he just wanted to go off and build his own thing. He didn't like help. Like, you like to build things. How did that? I don't know. How was the relationship in that sense that you wanted to build things that help build more?
So timing, right? So again, Bootup Labs was our first accelerator. So Danny and I both did that together, right? And he decided, and he did other thing, and I've done other things in between as well. And he decided the right thing for him was to dive 100% into one startup, except of course for all of the other startups that he's also co-founded that he still helps run. So I'm sure I'll get that itch at some point as well. I have an idea around cooking, but I don't have a huge burning itch to do it right now. Danny and I are good friends. We may end up moving in together again. We're always scheming. Again, he and Maura are both definitely have the let's find other people to do stuff with, which it's amazing if you can find people like that. Because when you're like, hey, there's this really great, basically, like, Maura has very discreet times when she allows Danny and I to go out and have beer together, because whenever it happens, we're like, and then we could do this, and then we could do this, and then also there'll be a tower that we can jump. And she's like, you went out with Boris again, didn't you? And he's like, yeah. And then it'll be like, and then he'll like turn to Maura and he's like, so, could you work on that with Boris? And she's all, ah.
We'll take one more question.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, thanks for the shout out. I'm not really an advisor. I just failed.
He just plays one on TV.
Yeah. Well, I know you. One of the things you told me one time was, visit Vancouver is a great place to have a startup, but make sure you raise money outside to come here. That's, and I found that interesting, but a little bit stressful. But distressing actually. Having done the consulting work, I don't think I could be able to do that again. So what options there are for, if you're a startup, and I think Jayesh from Piketty also recently posted a blog post about this, that it's great, go out, get the money, but then come to Vancouver. Will that ever change?
Yeah, so, Ryan Holmes talks a little bit about the Hootsuite Mafia or the Invoke Mafia that they're hoping to kind of kick things off. And Natobi got acquired by Adobe. Dave Johnson is doing some investing locally as an angel investor. What I've come to the realization is that I'm essentially going to write off the mostly old white guys and actually say that we have to build a new angel investment layer from scratch that's made up of operators who have had some wins. So yes, it's going to change as we have wins because ultimately people like living here. So that's a good point in our favor. The thing is that people also like traveling here, right? So For those investors who aren't super strict about you need to be, an Uber cab ride away from my office, which is the case for most angel investors, not, non-professionals, through tools like AngelList and things like that. And again, one of the things I've encouraged Cheryl to do is like, great, Boris, other Boris, Danny, what if we brought in speakers from outside of Vancouver, which really is just my secret plan of like, you organize other people to come here, then I get to meet them and we have strong ties to other places. So I think this is what it comes down to again, right? We've got Grow Conference in Vancouver. So we now have a great world-class event that we can say, hey, interesting people that I met while I was on vacation, while I was at a conference elsewhere, while I was wherever, you should come up to Vancouver in August for GrowConf. So this is the same thing. Find people that you like working with and bring them back. This is a process. Brad Feld talks about the growth of startup communities, and say it takes 15 to 20 years. On bad days, I wake up and I'm like, I don't even know if we're at year 5. And on good days, I'm like, maybe we're on like year 12. It's close. I can feel it.
All right, thank you. Next idea you want to do? Count me in. So.
Sweet technical co-founder.
Long haul trucking.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone.